Well, thank you very much. It was a very tough act to follow, but I will do my best. I do have to say I don't have a presentation that we could show, but my boss and my mentor, Ina Fimchik, she's written a book, and the book is about everything you need to know about opening a business in the United States. So everything you need to know. She and I, we kind of cried after she wrote it. She said, all of my life, all of the time I spent studying this had fit into that little book, but you're all welcome to grab one. I work for White Summers. It's a law firm. It's a global law firm. We do a lot of technology work. I have more books, so darn, popular. There's a little chapter in it about how to relocate to the United States, and it talks about just about every visa there is. And there's a visa to come to the US, and there's a visa for every letter of an alphabet. From A to Z, there's a visa for it. But if you wanted to come, oh, look at that. But there's really only 4 visas that you could possibly use. Is that better? Still not better. Can everybody hear me? Thank you. I think he was just messing with me. So there's a visa for every letter in the alphabet, but there's only 4 that you could possibly use to come and work in the United States. And of those, there's only 2 that the founder of the company could use to bring basically C-level executives and maybe the key people at the company to work in the States. And those visas are L1 and E2. I've been blessed to have worked with some of the greatest Ukrainian entrepreneurs. There's also a visa called O1. That's a visa for people who have extraordinary ability or something or other, and they can come to the States and do their work there. But let's concentrate on the 2 that you could use. And again, I should start with this. I promised 2 people that I'll open with this. I very much hope that that my job becomes obsolete. I very much hope that the immigration will not ever be a subject, because borders and business don't mix very well. People that do business, people that do internet business should not be bound by borders. You should be able to come to any country you want and do anything you possibly want. However, in the current times, we have visas and we have to follow them. So back to my subject. The subject is there's 2 visas that you could potentially use. It's great to be Ukrainian. I have to say that. Many of the people from the former Soviet Union cannot enjoy at least one of the visas that Ukrainians get, and it's an E2. It's a visa for investors, and normally people who invest in companies can use this to come to the US and basically do business, and it's called an investor visa. However, it's not really, the subject of the visa isn't so much how much money you've invested in your business. The subject is the company that you operate in the United States has to be at least 50% owned by Ukrainians, which is easy enough. And the people who are basically the key people for the company can come and enjoy this, and they can work in the United States, they can come to Silicon Valley and innovate. That's what you do. That's what you do anyways, and you should be able to come and do this in Silicon Valley. So initially, when the visa was created, they thought of the following thing. They said, invest enough money to make your company operational and come and operate it. And then they never really said how much money you need to do this. So the first question that I normally am asked when people call me on the phone, they go, well, how much do I have to invest? There's no number. They're never attached a number to it. So they basically said the investment has to be substantial. And it's often where a person goes to the interview at the consulate and he has asked the question, are you investing a substantial amount? Well, substantial isn't how many zeros are attached to it. Again, substantial is, they basically use this comparative formula. They say, well, how much money do you need to make the company operational? And if you say, well, I need $1 million, they say, okay, well, we want to see that you have $500,000 to do this. So for $1 million, it's half of that. And it slides down. It's a changing slide. So if you say, I need $1 million, it's a half of it. If you say, I need $300,000, well, you need to show that you have at least 80% of that. And the lower you go, the less the amount becomes. So if you say, I need $100,000 to operate the business, they want to see the entire amount. They want to make sure that you have it. They want to make sure that you're able to invest it, and they want to make sure that this money is, and I've actually just come to the very much the essence of this speech. All that you need to do is make sure that your business is transparent. They want to make sure that the money you have made hasn't come from like Colombian cocaine dollars, right? They want to make sure that you've officially made the money, that you've paid taxes from it, that it's, I guess the saying is it's the white accounting. They want to make sure it's official. And that's all the United States cares about. They don't care about much of anything else, but they want to make sure that the money you made is not a criminal enterprise, basically. And so the least amount of money we had ever been able to use to get someone an E2 visa was $0. And this is the way we have done it. There was a great Ukrainian company that had done a wonderful product that came to me and said, well, we created a business. We really haven't invested much into it, but Anderson Horowitz is giving us a ton of money. What do we do? How do we get a visa? And I said, well, how much money are they giving you? And for the sake of this conversation, let's say they said $1 million. And they gave it to them for 10% of the business. So we said, well, 10% of the business is $1 million. Then the 100% is $10 million. And if you've made, somewhere you had to have used the $9 million had to have come from somewhere. And it came from you. And then we calculated and we said, well, it has to be the IP that you guys brought in. It has to be the goodwill of the company. It has to be you guys relocating here. So everything they have done, the guys from Ukraine invested exactly $0. And yet they were able to enjoy the visa. They've come to the States. They're doing wonderfully. I speak to them all the time, and they're doing really great. So always think about this. The investor visa isn't so much about you investing money. It's about you investing what you have, and that's brilliance. You guys are brilliant. You're here for a reason, and for that reason, you should be able to come anywhere you want, including Silicon Valley, and do your business. So the E2 visa is available to the following. It's available to C-level executives, so it's the executives. It's available to supervisors. So if you send someone to do business who's going to basically supervise professionals, that person should be able to get a visa. And it's also available for what they call essential knowledge personnel. Basically, the way we process that is we usually, when an engineer is being transferred from, let's say somewhere in Ukraine, and he's being transferred to the Silicon Valley, we make an argument that this person knows something very essential about the product, about the... So, to put it bluntly, it's not about a programmer, it's more about an architect. So if an architect is able to create something new, something great, he knows something very detailed about this product, this is the person you should be able to bring out E2. We've also, and it worked out well, some Ukrainian outsourcing company had been able to use this business model. They, however, unlike the example I just gave you, did invest some money. Oh my God, I needed some water. But so E2 is a wonderful visa. I think I have more books. I do have more books. I'll be sure to bring them out. And it's all described there. So the second visa you should normally be able to use to bring executives and essential personnel to the United States is an L1A. So this visa is a little... I should have a presentation, shouldn't I? Yeah, it's traveling with 2 kids and a wife. Didn't work out. I was planning, I'm going to work on a plane. It's going to be great. Never works out. Yeah, but 2 wonderful children. What am I going to do? So the other visa you could potentially use, and it's also described in the same booklet, is an L1A. It's a visa that's available. It's a little different. If for an E2, all you have to do is you have to have a business in the United States that's at least 50% owned by Ukrainians. The L1A requires you to first have a business overseas in Ukraine, for example, for at least 1 year. So the person being transferred has to have worked for a business in Ukraine or anywhere else in the world for at least 1 year. And when I say work, he has to be getting paid for doing this. So basically, the biggest question I'm normally asked is, well, there's two. The first one goes like this. Well, yes, I do work, but I don't really get paid for this, and I don't really, it's not official. I'm kind of working. It's my own business. That's unfortunately is not going to work. So it's very important that the person officially works. The salary may be very much minimal, but it has to be there. So when somebody says, oh, I'm a founder, Mark Zuckerberg makes $1 a year, I'm kind of like him, can you bring me over? Normally, yes, but you have to be able to prove that you have worked for your company for at least 1 year. And the other, and that's, again, it brings me to very much the gist of this speech is, people go, well, you understand, we're trying to optimize the taxation. And we're never the employees, we're all, what do they say, independent contractors, or what's the saying in Ukraine? It's the individually, EP? What is it? Something like that. Yeah, so basically people go, well, that's that. From what I had known, some big companies were able to actually contact the trade representatives of the United States and Ukraine, and they were able to convince the US government that working as an independent contractor is okay. As long as you're being given, the assignments being given by the company, your work is controlled by the company, you are an employee. Even though it's not in your labor book and it doesn't really say that, well, this is who I am, you still are. But it doesn't work for small companies. For small companies, it's very important that you are an employee of the company. And if you are an employee of the company, if you have worked for the company for at least 1 year, you should be able to be transferred to the US affiliate. So they set up 4 different ways of connecting companies in the United States and in Ukraine, in our example. They said we're going to use 4 different ways to connect the companies. There's really 2. So one of the ways that I had never in my life had faced is called, we are an office of a foreign company in the United States. Well, it makes very little sense for anyone who knows anything about US corporate laws, because you don't really want to bring everything that you have in Ukraine into the US jurisdiction. You want to make sure that you have an entity that will be responsible for anything you do. So if you get sued for something very small, and it happens all the time, that your Ukrainian company isn't in any way involved in this. That you want to make sure that your entity, that little, company that you created, that's what gets sued, not your entire operation. And so that office of a foreign company in the United States, I've only seen it once. Spanish, and it's actually worked the other way around. Spanish basically have this law that allows a US company to open a business in Spain and say we're an office of a Spanish company over a US company in Spain. And that's the 5 minutes, gotcha. Are we doing questions and answers too? Okay, cool. So that's basically that. So that never works. The other way to connect the 2 companies is when one company owns the other company, and there has to be a majority owner of one or the other. It's either the US company owns the Ukrainian company or the other way around. The Ukrainian company is a majority owner of the US company. And the final way is when both companies are owned either by the same entity or by people, either the same people or one person. So these are the real 2 ways to connect the 2 companies. Either one owns the other, or both are owned by somebody else. And that's really, all there is to it. If you had worked for a company as a manager or as an executive in Ukraine, you should be able to come to work for the affiliated company in the United States. It's a little more complicated than that, but it works. And that's what I do. That's basically all I spent the last, 26 years of my life doing, bringing people from all over the world to the Silicon Valley. And I hope I get to bring, there's about 100 of you, all of you to the Silicon Valley, if you need to. Silicon Valley isn't really for everyone. I hope that you would need to come there. I hope that you'd be able to create great companies all over the world. And if you do have to come, Well, I'm there to help you out with this. And I was told 5 minutes, so are there any questions? Go for it.
Hi, Simon. Thank you for the keynote. My question is it better to, let's say, set up a legal entity in the US and then and operate from Ukraine, or set up legal entity, let's say, in Ukraine or Poland, operate for a year, and then move to the US?
Okay, so I have a very holistic approach to all of the business immigration. I say this: if your business is if ahead of everything, if the locomotive is your business, we'll figure it out. If your locomotive is immigration and you're trying to assess, basically think, oh, should I do this, should I do that? That's probably not going to work. So think from the business point of view. Do you need an American entity? If you do, great. If you don't, other than that, like if you're thinking like, well, should I have a business in the United States, or I'm sorry, should I have a business in Poland? Should I have a business anywhere else? If you have a working business, if it works, we'll get you a visa. So that's very simple. And again, if you're a Ukrainian citizen, if you're a Ukrainian national, you're ahead of the majority of people in the world. You can create a business and you don't need to have operated anywhere else. If you have a business, if you have an idea, if you have anything that is going to make you money, we'll figure it out. Okay? Do I have answered your question? Awesome. But, I'm happy to talk more afterwards. Anyone else? Yes. There's a lady with a...
You know that Ukrainian citizens can't legally have a bank account abroad unless they cannot have a bank account abroad legally unless you get a special permission from like a national bank or whatever. So, but if you establish a company in US, obviously you have to like have your personal bank account there as well. So what do you suggest?
Americans have great respect for everybody else's laws, but they really don't care whether Ukraine allows you to have an account in the U.S. They're okay with it. They'll be like, sure, if you have the money to invest, please do. So there's nothing that the Americans are going to tell you. There are different things. And right now, since Trump came in, things are changing. Things are changing very rapidly. We don't understand most of it. Overlooking it is super confusing. But so right now, there's a problem opening an account for anyone. Anyone coming in, basically trying to open an account, if you don't have what's called the social security number, you'll have a problem opening a bank account. But it will not be in any way connected to Ukraine. The laws of Ukraine would not in any way affect it. Anyone else?
So just a small remark to previous question. Actually, recently NBU allowed to have foreign bank accounts with some performer. It was just recently. But my question is about B1 visa. What is your general approach to people coming under B1 visa? And what's your look if there is such structure? Sorry. So what's the approach to structure? You have an American company, you contracting with Ukrainian legal entity, and Ukrainian legal entity has contractors. And these contractors come to work for American company, but got paid from Ukrainian company, not from American company. Thank you.
Sure. That's a no-no. You cannot use a B1 visa to come to the United States and work. So basically you can come, okay, so the approach to this that the government uses is if your visit to the United States benefits anyone in the United States, that's a no-no. You're not supposed to use a B1 visa. If you're there to benefit a Ukrainian employer, it should be okay, right? So we have several companies that have benefited greatly from the E2 visa. It's in the booklet. If you didn't get it, I have more books. So basically what they had said is B1, and people had gone to jail over this. There's this great company from India called Infosys. that had abused B1 visas. They basically brought people over on B1 and they kind of said, well, you know, you really are working for Infosys in India, but we're going to like implant you in the US businesses as contractors. And finally, their president went to jail for that. It was a great scandal. I've actually worked for a law firm that represented them at the time. Thankfully, they took that part of the business away from us. It wasn't my fault, basically. But yes, so B1 visa is to be used to benefit an overseas employer. It should never benefit a US employer. And as long as as long as you keep that up, you should be fine. But E2 works great. The E2 visa, if Ukrainians that have a company in Ukraine set up a business in the United States that's owned 50% or more by Ukrainians, then you can get an E2 visa as an essential person. Say you're a project manager, you come into, I don't know, to Google to run some like little project on behalf of the Ukrainian company, you should be able to do this. But the B1, it's a great visa to come and basically shake hands, talk about investments, meet counterparts, but not to benefit a US employer. Have I answered it?